Hello, and thank you for joining us. It's exciting to see how many of you are tuning in tonight. I'm Kim Inman, co-president of the League of Women Voters of the Palatine Area. We're partnering with the League of Women Voters of Arlington Heights to bring you this important program.
The fall semester.
As a league, we work to increase understanding of major policy issues and to influence public policy through education and advocacy. There I am. We're proud to be nonpartisan, neither supporting nor opposing candidates or political parties at any level of government. You may see us out registering voters or conducting candidates forums, but you will never see us campaigning for any candidate. We work on issues that are of vital concern to our members and the public. League members themselves choose which public policy issues will be targeted for study and action. Immigration is one of the issues of our current focus. Now, just a couple housekeeping notes before we begin. This program is being recorded and will be available on both League's YouTube channels. Closed captioning is available. There's a button at the bottom of your screen, and you also see it illustrated on the slide on the screen right now. There's a button that you can click on. It says live transcript CC to start the transcription, but be aware that it is not a perfect transcription. Please use the chat feature if you have questions. We will read them at the end of the presentation. Again, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And now I'll turn it over to the co-director of our programs committee, Gail Benakis.
Thank you, Kim. And again, thank you to all of you who have joined us. What we have learned in the League of Women Voters is certainly that all politics is local. Immigration is not just a global issue or a border dilemma. It is a problem that is impacting young people here in the northwest suburbs of Chicago and nearby areas. Tonight is the second part of a program on immigration. In the July program, we learned from attorney Leah Kim of the North Suburban Legal Aid Clinic that asylum cases are some of the most complicated cases to win. Tonight, you will hear stories of children and teens on the road to asylum and how two organizations in our area support them. Sometimes it does take a poet to help us frame the almost unbearable. So we begin this evening with a short poem, Home, by Worcestershire.
Home. No one leaves home unless home is the mouth of a shark. You only run for the border when you see the whole city running as well. Your neighbors running faster than you, breath, blood in their throats. The boy you went to school with who kissed you dizzy behind the old tin factory is holding a gun bigger than his body. You only leave home when home won't let you stay. No one leaves home unless home chases you. Fire under feet, hot blood in your belly. It's not something you ever thought of doing until the blade burns thread into your neck. And even then, you carried the anthem under your breath, only tearing up your passport in an airport toilets, sobbing as each mouthful of paper made it clear that you would not be going back. You have to understand that no one would put their children in a boat unless the sea is safer than the land. No one burns their palms under trains, beneath carriages. No one spent days and nights in the stomach of a truck feeding on newspapers unless the miles traveled means something more than journey. No one crawls under fences, wants to be beaten, wants to be beaten. No one chooses refugee camps or strip searches where your body is left aching, or prison, because prison is safer than a city of fire, and one prison guard in the night is better than a truckload of men who look like your father. No one could take it, no one could stomach it, no one's skin would be tough enough. The go-home blacks, refugees, dirty immigrants, asylum seekers, sucking our country dry, niggers with their hands out, face most strange, savage, messed up their country, and now they want to mess up ours? How do the words, the dirty looks roll off your backs? Maybe it's because the blow is softer than a limb torn off, or the words are more tender than 14 men between your legs, or the insults are easier to swallow than rubble, than bone, than your child body in pieces. I want to go home, but home is the mouth of a shark. Home is the barrel of a gun. And no one would leave home unless home chased you to the shore, unless home told you to quicken your legs, leave your clothes behind, crawl through the desert, wade through the ocean, drown, save, be hungry, beg, forget pride. Your survival is more important. No one leaves home unless home is a sweaty voice in your ear saying, leave, run away from me now. I don't know what I've become, but I know that anywhere is safer than here.
Heidi, would you be kind enough to start our introductions?
Yes, I apologize. I really was I've seen that video before when Father Cory and I did a program for our league last year, and I found myself getting emotional all over again. Anyway, my name is Heidi Graham, and I am president of the League of Women Voters of Arlington Heights, Mount Prospect, Buffalo Grove, Elk Grove Village, Prospect Heights, and Wheeling. Go ahead and say that 6 times fast, several times a week. I am very grateful to the League of Women Voters of the Palatine area for their friendship, for partnering, and their sisterhood. We are very excited to be here tonight, but I am really proud to count Father Cory as one of my friends. The work Father Cory does is transformative for everyone he meets and for everyone he works with. He's been a member of the Clerics of St. Viator, a religious order of brothers, priests, and lay associates since 1987. He has served as a religious educator, classroom teacher, and high school administrator. From 2013 to 2016, he served as president of St. Viator High School in Arlington Heights. As a side note, our league gives all St. Viator students a gift when they're old enough to vote. And then in 2016, he began work full-time as an advocate for immigrants' rights and interfaith bridge building. Father Cory now serves as the executive director of Bethany House of Hospitality, a Northwest suburban interfaith program that provides a home and services for up to 25 young men, 18 to 23 years old, who have fled their homelands, are seeking asylum in the U.S., and have no family to live with while they await their legal proceedings, meaning they are kept out of our public facilities. They save taxpayers quite a bit. My husband and I did the math, a lot of money. As if this weren't enough, Father Cory co-founded the Children of Abraham Coalition in 2010 to counter the increasing faith-based prejudice that he saw in our nation and our world. The coalition is a 501c3 nonprofit located in the Northwest suburbs, plans events for all ages that promote interfaith relationships, reverence, and literacy. It is governed by a board of Muslim, Jewish, and Christian leaders. 1/3 of them are high school and college age. You know, Father Cory is a real slacker. To say that I am honored to have him with us here tonight is the understatement of the year. Father Cory makes me want to be a better person. Now I'd like to introduce Cami Bassick from the League of Women Voters of Palatine. She is the co-director of their programs, and we're honored to, for the program that she's brought you tonight.
Cami, you're muted.
Sorry, I was coughing. Okay. All right, here we go again. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. It is my privilege to introduce Sister Patricia Crowly this evening. Sister is a member of the Order of St. Benedict, the Benedictine Sisters. It was during the beginning of her remarkable life of service that I met Sister Pat. She was my French teacher at St. Scholastica Academy. Sister Pat comes to us this evening with 42 years of professional experience in education and social services. She has a broad knowledge of homelessness, housing, criminal justice, women's rights, and immigration. Sister Pat has a bachelor's degree from Mundelein College, now Loyola University, and a master's from Manhattan College. In addition, she has been awarded 3 honorary doctorates. Her professional experiences include, but are not limited to, Executive Director of Deborah's Place, a not-for-profit that provided services for homeless women in Chicago, Executive Director of the Howard Area Community Center, a service and advocacy agency for the low income in Chicago, Executive Director of Chicago's Continuum of Care that works to end homelessness in Chicago, and the Prioress of the Benedictine Sisters of Chicago. She traveled in Latin America and the Caribbean to study women's organization efforts as a Chicago Community Trust Fellow. In addition to her professional experiences, Sister Pat has been the recipient of multiple awards, including one, not surprisingly, from the League of Women Voters of Chicago, as she shares so much of our mission of education and advocacy. Today, Sister serves as the president of Bethany House Board of Directors and pursues her work in spiritual guidance. Thank you, Sister, for being here tonight with us.
Welcome. So I am glad to be here. Thank you all for being here, for your interest in this. Father Cory and I thought we would begin by just defining some basic terms so that we're all on the same page. So first, I want to distinguish between refugees and asylees. And if you were on the July call, you probably know this. The refugees are people who have been accepted by a country for entry. They come and they will have a path to citizenship when they get here. It may be a while, but they will have a path. And they receive benefits through a federal agency for a period of time after they arrive. An example is the Syrian refugees during the war, the past 10, 12 years, the Afghan refugees that will come at this time. Asylum seekers are people who come to the border to ask for sanctuary, to ask to be allowed to enter. After passing a credible fear interview, they are allowed to enter and begin the long process toward asylum that has many, many steps, which we will talk about as we go through this. So this is a population that's served by Viator House and Bethany House, and the process does take many, many years, as we will talk about later. Cory?
It's also an honor for me to be here. I am particularly flattered by the introduction. It's I should fill it out by telling you all the things that I have done wrong in my life. So it's such an honor to be here and an honor to partner once again with the League of Women Voters in the Northwest suburbs. These two leagues and these many folks represented in this great advocate for our democracy, the League of Women Voters. One of the things I think that we wanted to mention real quickly is the surge of young people that you have seen reported at our borders in recent months. Viator House and Bethany House in particularly, not exclusively, but in particular were set up to welcome young people who came without parents, without family to the border seeking asylum. And so that you understand the process in our nation, if a child 17 years and younger comes to the southern or comes to our border, it would be the southwestern border normally, and asks for protection, that child within 72 hours is supposed to be transferred to a federally funded youth immigrant shelter where caseworkers there seek to find relatives of the child somewhere in the United States with whom the child can live while that child awaits for her or his immigration proceedings, asylum proceedings normally. If a child cannot be reunited with family or united with family and turns 18, that young person is no longer a child under our law. So what happens then, and what spurred the opening of these two incredible programs, one that I am honored to be part of, Viator House, on the 18th birthday of that young immigrant who, as you saw in the heart-wrenching images of that video, that young person who probably fled murder, threat, torture, and saw that along the way during the 1,000 miles plus more that young person traveled to the southwest border. That young person on his 18th birthday, without family to live with, becomes an adult, and immigration officials come and handcuff that child and take her or him to a adult detention center in the Chicago area, where there are several of these government-funded youth immigration shelters. These kids on their 18th birthday are being taken to Kankakee County or McHenry County jail facilities, where the federal government is paying those counties about $130. So Viator was opened, and soon after Bethany House to be home, particularly for these young people, working with their attorneys and the federal government. We're able to, quite often, most of the time, secure their release so that the young person can live at our facilities, go to school, if necessary, seek counseling, work when they get work permission, send money home, and start to build a life, and work closely with their attorneys so that they can make the most powerful argument possible to win their asylum case. But I mentioned that they've been through so much. Pat's going to talk a little bit about the trauma the young people that flee to our country have faced.
So we often talk about 3 levels of trauma. First of all, the danger, the uncertainty that they came from in their own homeland, and they live with that. Whether that was because of an oppressive government, from gang violence, fear of that, from abuse, from extreme poverty, hunger. The poem that you just saw illustrated certainly demonstrates that. So that's one level of of trauma that they experience. A second level might be on the journey here. And each journey is unique in many ways. But if you saw the PBS special on the Darien Gap, you know some of the physical and emotional, psychological challenges that people have as they travel through Panama and up through Central America and through Mexico. So there are many fears there of smugglers, of trafficking for young women, of rape, of just lots of fear. A third level is what happens at the border. And Father Cory just described some of that process. But sometimes when they come to the border, the ICE, the federal agent at the border, can be very, very frightening to them and threatening. And so there's a lot of fear there. And then they don't know if they're going to pass that credible fear interview or not. And if they do, they're sent to adult detention, as Father Cory just described. So those are three levels, in their own country, on the journey, and at the border. But I would suggest that there are lots of other levels of trauma that these young people, they've lost their adolescence, and yet they're still very young. They're very courageous, very strong, but they're still very young. So, there's lots for them to deal with in the trauma. So I would turn it back over to Father Cory to describe more about Viator House.
So when I was president of St. Viator High School, as was described, Viatoring, dear close friend of mine and Viatoring brother Michael Gosh, saw this phenomena that I described. These kids who have fled torture, near beatings, kidnapping, having family members killed, and then seeing such horrendous stuff along the way. On their 18th birthday, were getting sent to county jails, in essence, and said, the Viatorians in particular were founded to work with young people without means in rural France. And he said, we should do something about this. And so he invited me to partner with him. And thus we together founded Viator House. As I said, working with the attorneys of these young men, in our case, we invite young men to consider becoming a participant in our program, where instead of sitting in a jail cell, the young man is able to, because of our case managers, go to school, access services to grow intellectually, to grow educationally, they learn work skills, they learn life skills. And another very important part of our program is connecting these young men to the faith tradition of their choice. So since we have opened, Viator House has hosted, since January 2017, 77 young men from 20 nations. And we have been surrounded by incredible volunteers who find us to tutor, to mentor, to help out at our house. And the environment of community and support and opportunity has brought out the best of these young men, so that we have seen 16 young men graduate high school, 9 are currently in community college, 30, I have to look at the exact number, 30 to 40 of the young men in our care, they're not technically in our supervision, but who have come to live with us, have been able to find relatives and go reunite with them. And all of this while almost all of them are still waiting for their immigration proceedings, which can take 4 or 5 years. What's remarkable about the young people is their incredible gifts, and how when you surround them with hope, with healing, with opportunity, with people who care, those gifts come out, and they start to dream and start to jump over obstacles, and then even start to take care of each other. So Viator House, it has just been a gift in my life I can't even describe, and a gift I was invited to be part of. And soon after that, Sister Pat Crowley said, well, what about the young women? And so I turned it over to her to talk about the beginnings of Bethany House.
Actually, I, through Brother Michael, volunteered at Viator House when I finished being prioress of my own community. And at a open house at Viator House, someone said, what about the young women? And I said to Michael, well, I could help do that. And so I called a meeting, and many other women religious came to that meeting. And from there, Bethany House started in October of 2017. So whom do we serve? Well, we serve young women seeking asylum, as we told you. Originally, it was the 18-year-olds, 18 to 22, who had either been in adult detention or in the children's centers. And gradually, we found as our government was separating families, that young women who had small children were in danger of being separated. In fact, several of them had been separated and then were able to come. So we took them into Bethany House. So we have had, I think, 11 small children, as well as the 55 women. And I believe they're from 18 different countries. And currently, we also, because we have a larger house now, we moved to Chicago from Bartlett, Illinois in December of 2019. And we're able to take more. So we are taking women in their 20s, as well as the younger women, the women at the border. Two that came in the past 2 weeks, one with a small child and one who is expecting a child. So it's a mixture right now at our house because we have more room. So why do they come? Well, they come certainly to find a better life, but they come running away from something that they are afraid of: war, violence, abuse, oppression, trafficking, persecution for sexual orientation or religious orientation or political involvement. And how long do they stay at Bethany House? Our average has been 6 months. Now that goes from 1 day, so that a woman who was released from the children's centers on her 18th birthday comes to us for 1 day, either previously because her family may have been afraid that they would be apprehended if they didn't have documentation. So they didn't want to take her when she was in a federal funded facility. And it ranges from that to almost 4 years. Two of our first residents just moved out after really 3 years and 8 months, I think. So it varies, but the average is about 6 months. And what do we do? Well, we provide a home until she's ready to live on her own. Our mission statement is until she can live independently. We offer encouragement and support. We have a fantastic staff who are present to those women as they adjust to feeling safe. We coordinate with other service providers, legal through the NIJC, which is part of Heartland Alliance for most of their legal counsel, healthcare, a number of facilities that help us with healthcare, with education, the city college system, as well as one young woman from South America where we were enabled to get a 4-year scholarship for her at a college in Joliet. So, you know, there just varies there. We accompany her or get volunteers or interns to accompany her as she navigates through the systems that are so complicated very often. We offer instruction and guidance as she gains skills that are essential for independent living. And we make available resources for her to grow in her own faith tradition. I mentioned that we were in Bartlett. Now we're in Hyde Park. So I just wanted to comment before I turn it back over to Cory, that at the border right now, there are 4 different levels of children. They call them categories. One is children who will eventually unite with their family members who are here. Another is children who will go into foster care. A third is children who will have a sponsor when they are 18. And then there's category 4, that is the children without options. And that's really who we serve right now. I also wanted to just give a little bit of statistics. Father Cory mentioned how long the process takes. In immigration court right now, it is said that the national backlog of cases is 1,337,372. That is a lot of cases. And NIJC, the legal group that I talked about before, yesterday they spoke about the fact that they have nearly 500 of those open cases here in Chicago. Of the 55 women that have been at Bethany House, only 3 have received asylum. And one of them had 2 children, so you could count them too. So crossing the border for these women is only the beginning of a long process toward asylum. So I think we're going to move now to interviewing, and Father Cory is going to interview a young man, and I'm going to tell you the story of some young women. Cory, I think you're muted. Shall I? Oh, you're not muted?
There, I think I'm, yeah.
There you go.
I was not able to unmute myself. I'm sorry. There, I think the system is set up, so we had to get some help for, just very similarly, yes, only a few of our men have won asylum. Most are still waiting. And they're remarkable because they continue to succeed, go to school, work, send money home, grow in all these ways, even with that uncertainty. And we're blessed right now tonight with one of our first participants. I'm going to call him Juan, who now works at Viator House and is still waiting for his asylum case to be decided. He's from Central America, and he's been willing to answer some of the questions we're going to be put to him about his journey. So Juan, are you there? I think you'll have to unmute him, whoever's doing tech.
I am here, and I am checking on this right now.
Okay. I think it says guest. He's under.
Correct. And I've asked to unmute. Now it just needs to happen on his side.
There we go. Are you there, Juan?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, thank you for joining us. Sister Pat, did you want to start with the questions, or you want me to start? So
Sure.
First of all, it's really important that everyone know that Juan is not his real name. He has an open asylum case that hopefully will be heard and won this year. And he is agreed to answer and talk about what he's comfortable talking about.
Okay, so Juan, Tell us what you are comfortable telling us about your journey to the United States. What were the hardest parts and what kept you going during that journey?
I think that without a doubt, one of the hardest parts was leaving my country, because in the first place, I did not want to leave. Unfortunately, I had some problems over there with gang violence over my country, and I had to flee my country. On my way to many countries in Central America and Mexico, I unfortunately just find more people that try to take advantage of immigrants like me and many others. One of the hardest things was that I was kidnapped, and I think that it was what kept me going. It was just hope, I would say, that will end soon, and my faith.
Thank you so much.
So your faith, and what else, Juan?
I had hope that it will not be that like that forever, and that one day I will be released.
So hope, you just kept going because you've had faith that something good would be waiting.
Correct.
You entered the U.S. when you were 19, right?
Yes.
And can you talk about how you were received when you came across authorities, and what happened after that or at that time, whatever you're comfortable sharing?
I was caught in the border near McAllen, Texas, by the fire department. It was unfortunately these people that traffic with people to the USA. They put a group of people who were immigrants who were trying to cross to the United States, and as they crossed us to the United States, they put us in like a van.
And these were smugglers, right?
Correct.
They were all in a van. Okay, all right.
And after they crossed us, they said that a driver will come to pick us up and will drive us up to Houston, Texas. As we were there waiting during the night, smoke starts coming out of the engine. We heard like noise of people outside, but we thought that it was immigration, so everyone kept quiet. We were about 15 people in there, one like next to each other, trying to get to hide. And all this smoke started to get in, and we realized that it was fire, that it was coming from the van. And that's when everyone started to freak out and tried to get out until the doors were locked, so we couldn't get out easily. And like people were kicking the windows and everything until one of the windows broke and we could get out. We got out like 5 minutes after we got out, the van exploded. It was a huge explosion. And the fire, like the fire department arrived to see the fire, and they found us over there. So they called immigration, they called the police, and it was a lot of immigration officers who came to put handcuffs on our hands and put us in more vans to take us to detention centers.
So the smugglers lit the van on fire, locked you in there and lit the van on fire to try to detract police from something else they were doing.
As we were there, two officers speak Spanish, so I could understand what they were saying. And one of them said something like, these guys are trying to put something huge right now, because what he meant was that the cartel members wanted to get the attention of the authorities in this specific area so they can smuggle other stuff or more people around the area.
Okay. What a horrendous experience.
So Juan, when you came to the border, then you went to detention, right? Or to the children's center. What was that like for you?
He was 19, so he—
Oh, I'm sorry, to adult detention.
Yeah, so he ended up in adult detention as a 19-year-old who fled all that violence and fled and had that horrendous experience. So, and you were in a county jail, right?
Correct. I was moved to a county jail in Carnes County in Texas. And I honestly did not know anything about anything from here. So most of the people who were there were people who have committed crimes or got caught, or people who were just in process of deportation. I was the only young person in my cell. And as I was there, one immigration officer came to visit, and she saw me that I was young and very skinny. So she asked me how old was I, and I told her. She asked me what I was doing there, and I told her, and she was very nice. So I got to talk to her, and she told me that I could ask for asylum if I apply, but I told her that I didn't know what that was. Or so she asked me if I have proofs of what I would say, of what I was saying. I could possibly get a case for asylum seeker, as an asylum seeker. And she asked me if I wanted her to stop my deportation order, because I had already signed it. The night of the explosion, when we were caught, they put us in a small jail cell, and I was still a little confused, and I was signing everything that they were giving me. So that's why I was in this county jail, and they told, and for people who was going to be deported.
So what's important for folks to know who are listening is that Juan is with us today because of a wonderful border official who took the time to inquire about his situation when she saw him trapped in a jail cell with people accused of crimes, serious crimes. And so credit to her. But the other thing, and this is not uncommon, unfortunately, that happens at our border is that often immigrants are presented with papers to sign, as Juan talked about, and they're frightened, they're confused, they're often misled even, and they sign their own deportation orders, agreeing to be self-deport. So that's one of the things that occurs at our border, unfortunately. Eventually, Juan was welcomed. He was bonded out of detention, and eventually was one of the first 5 men we welcomed at Viator House. At that time, it was a few years later from when he arrived. It's kind of like a big brother, 23 years old when he moved into Viator House, and really became like a big brother to the other men. And as we filled the house, the others looked to him as a role model, to the point where Juan is a perfect example of what we hope to accomplish. At our place, he was able to get his driver's license, to continue to work on his English, to go get a job, raise money, move out, get an apartment, live successfully. And then we, with a job outside of Viator House, but then we stole him from that job and brought him back to Viator House, where, thanks be to God, he works now. So can you talk a little bit, Juan, about the difference Viator House makes for a participant, and then your role right now as you see it, working with these right now 25 young men, 18 to 22 from 10 countries. So what difference did it make for you?
Just Viator House was a great opportunity for me to grow up and to know more about the United States. I was presented with the opportunity to learn English and to educate more, to get education. I think the most important thing it was to get to know people from all around the world, because previous experiences that I had meeting people from all other places, it was mostly negative experiences. But I got to be here with people from many countries that I couldn't even understand. We couldn't even understand each other. But it was a great opportunity for me to learn about other cultures and about other religions and to understand each other.
And now, if I could say, you know, you not only are you working with us, but you're on your associate's degree at a community college. And the other question I want to ask is, you know, you're a house coordinator, and so you're working with our guys every day to make sure that they're comfortable with how to cook, do their laundry, clean, do house chores, and just building an environment where people feel, the young men feel like they're accepted and they have brothers there. Talk a little bit about your job and how you see Viator House helping these guys with whom you work.
I think that it's just like one of the greatest days always is when someone new comes in, and obviously that person don't know us, and we start sharing like, hey, you know, just this showing the house. Most of the people, many of the guys don't know how to cook. And over the years, I got some experience learning how to cook with other guys. And we teach someone how to cook, and it's very interesting when that person learns how to cook. Always bring me food, and hey, how does it taste like? Always looking to see if he learns. And I think that's pretty cool to see how a person from Honduras is learning how to make food from the other countries from all around the world, or in always sharing knowledge, basically.
And you act kind of as a big brother now, kind of helping these guys. You know, you're still waiting. How do you help these guys? Like Sister Pat said, similar, only a few of our guys have won Asylum. They're all waiting. How do you help them with that?
Well, there are some days that it obviously have happened to me that I'm like frustrated that it's taking so long and there is no result yet. And when I see somebody that is having a hard time, I just try to talk and say, bro, you know, I know what you're going through, but just have more patience and hope that everything is going to be resolved soon. And I think that have helped a little bit.
The fact that someone cares who's gone through it and going through it. Yeah. Sister Pat, I think, has another question too.
Well, I think, and then I want to talk a little bit about some of the women's experiences. But Juan, what are your hopes and dreams?
First, I want to one of my biggest hope is to get my asylum accepted this year, and so I can keep moving forward in life. I'm currently working in my associate degree, and I'm going to be finishing next year. And I'm thinking to move to a four-year university, so I can finish my bachelor. And that will be a great achievement, because I honestly, as a child, I always thought that I would go to university. Then many bad things happened, and I really lost my hope that I ever going to college. And as last year, thankfully, I got the opportunity to go to college. And I took that opportunity, and I'm hoping to finish it.
Thank you so much for sharing and for being with us. I wanted to say, I was hoping that we could interview one of our women. However, her asylum hearing is coming up this winter, and her lawyer preferred that she not be live on the interview. So she and I talked quite a bit. She came from Africa and had a long journey, as we talked about, and got to the border, and she spoke no English. And she was kept 4 days at the border in a cell with 15 other women, only floor mats on which to sleep and an open toilet, she said. She was assigned a translator who thought that she was lying. And part of the reason he thought she was lying was because her papers said that she was 22 and she was actually only 17. And the reason for that is she couldn't leave her own country if she were underage. So her papers said something different. And she then was transferred to adult detention. And to make a long story short, she got sick because she couldn't eat the food and she was hospitalized. And then through her lawyer, she was in contact with a family friend from her home country. And the ICE officer said that they would give her two options. One was to stay in detention and she was just too sick. And the other was to pay a $10,000 bond. And her family friend agreed to put up $5,000. So they did let her go, and they sent her on a 4-day bus trip across the country to other friends of her family in her own country. And she was there. What I wanted to share with you about her, when I asked her what her hopes and dreams were, she spoke about wanting to be a person that values life and could help other people. And that's a theme that I find, when we are talking with the young women at Bethany House, always they want to do something that they can help other people here. So I wanted to share that about her. And then just one other story that is very touching. There was a family that ended up in Brazil, and there was a mother, father, a daughter, and a son. And the father, after some years in Brazil, waiting to figure out how to come to the United States, the father decided to take the daughter with him through the Darien Gap and up through Central America and Mexico. And on the way, she watched her father drown, and she came on alone. And she is here now, and she is living with she lived at Bethany House for a while, and now she is living with one of her fellow countrywomen. And it's very, very touching, but that's an example of the trauma of the journey. The other thing I wanted to share with you, that Bethany House has accepted some transgender individuals and women, and who came because they were persecuted in their own country. And that is a whole other thing. And we decided that we would take them. So those are just some of the facts of some of the women's stories. Oh, one other thing. When Father Cory was talking about the fact that some people choose, and sometimes don't know enough, choose to be self-deported. That happened to several young women who were in detention And then somehow they signed something and they didn't realize that it wasn't able to be retracted. And so by the time they got to Bethany House and they realized there was a place for them to stay, they were going to be deported, and we helped them to get back to their own countries. But, you know, they regretted that they had signed that paper, because they would have stayed if they knew that there was some place that they could be safe. So we're glad to be here and give some safety to many young women. So thank you. Father Cory?
I just want to also thank everyone. There's just no way to really describe the strength and courage and character of the young people with whom we work. Someday, if you have the opportunity to come to one of our 2 facilities, you'll meet some of them, and without even asking about their immigration journeys, which we ask people not to inquire about, you'll see in their smiles, you'll hear their stories about success, and you'll see in their hospitality as they offer you food or coffee or water, that these young people are really, truly gifts to our nation. One, Sister Pat talked about how they like to serve. We are regularly taking guys to do service. You know, during the pandemic, many of our guys have gone to mosques and churches and schools to hand out food to families in a nation that hasn't even decided whether they can stay here. And a final story just that always touches me about a young man from Bangladesh. Some years back, I was driving with him, and he said, "Father, I don't have anything right now. I don't know when my case is going to be heard. I can't work, but I want to make a difference while I'm here. And I found out I can give my blood. I can give my blood to people who are sick in this country. So please help me figure out how often I can donate my blood." That will always stay with me. And we're a little bit behind time, I know, but we are going to have time for questions, for Q&A. But we also want to talk about the fact that rather than just learning about these events, and tonight for many of you might be like taking a drink of water out of a fire hose. We're thankful that you're here to learn. We're going to continue to put resources in the chat where you can learn more. We ask that you continue to learn, because there's so much misinformation, especially about asylum seekers. We ask you to learn, find resources, and pass it on. But then we're going to ask you to act, to change our system so that it is more compassionate, especially towards young people seeking asylum, so that it reflects more accurately our national values. So Sister Pat's going to first tell you about a law that was recently passed in Illinois, that I will put the link to that law in the chat, and she can tell you how we can thank politicians.
Okay, so obviously detention centers are not the place for these people seeking asylum, especially for young people, but for all. And so we need to get rid of them. 73% of the detention centers across the country are for-profit detention centers. And this administration, this federal administration, is choosing to minimize those gradually, but it's taking time. However, in Illinois, an act was passed and signed by our governor called the Illinois Way Forward Act. And it was signed, I think, just last week. And it will deny that any new contracts for detention centers in Illinois after January of 2022. So that's a baby step toward an end to detention. But it is an important step. So my suggestion is that so often we don't thank our legislators, but it would be good to thank your legislator for passing that Illinois Way Forward Act. And you know your own legislators, and just write them a little thank you.
The other thing that's important is what a lot of people don't realize is that a kid who flees here at 19 because he came home into Central America and found each member of his family, included his little sisters, shot in the head so that the cartel could take their land. That kid who flees to the US has no right to an attorney here. By the way, that kid lives at Viator House. And that kid has no right to attorney to protect his right and to defend him so he's not sent back to the country where the cartel lives that wanted to kill his entire family. In Illinois, because of State Representative Jennifer Gong Gershowitz, there is a bill pending right now that would establish a task force to study how Illinois could guarantee right to counsel to any immigrant in detention in Illinois who's faced with deportation. It's important that you know, there are, according to a study I saw by the National Council of State Legislatures, 75 to 90% of these kids who are fleeing to our countries don't have attorneys. And 80% of those, roughly, in a study it's 2014, who don't have attorneys are deported, whereas around 12% with attorneys are deported. So if Illinois could establish a right to legal counsel, it would be a game changer for kids who are and for adults like 19, 18, 19, 20-year-olds and older who are facing deportation to incredible violence and threat. There are currently 14,300, well, this was according to July 19th, last month, 14,319 minors immigrant minors in federal custody around our country in childcare facilities. Those kids, each of them, came here from horrendous circumstances, and each should have a right to a lawyer to help that kid navigate this incredibly complex system. So you can call, it's called HB 25, contact your state representative, your state senator, and ask for them to support it. I will also put a link in the chat for that.
Okay, and finally, I think Patty was going to put 3 websites into the chat room. One is the National Immigrant Justice Center, which is part of the legal services of Heartland Alliance here in Chicago and across the country. The second one is the Young Center, which trains volunteers and advocates for children who are seeking asylum. And the third one is a group called Justice in Motion, which is working on the reunification of families. And there's some, on that website, they're both legislative things and the stories of how hard it is to find the families where the children were separated. So that's a wonderful website too. So I think that's what we wanted to present. So we would open it up for questions and answers. Is that correct?
We do have some questions. First of all, how do these young people find out about your houses of hospitality?
No.
Generally, with us, it is, our young men generally are the lucky few who have attorneys. And so an attorney will reach out to us and say, this is Mohammed. He's from Somalia. He's a wonderful young man. He's going to turn 18, be sent to a county jail. He'd be a great fit. He wants to go to school. He wants to build a life. Will you consider welcoming him? And then we'll interview him. And if he wants to participate in our program, we'll appeal to immigration authorities. And 9 times out of 10, they will release him because he has our place to live at.
Primarily through the lawyers, through NIJC, and also through the Young Center, where they have children. I didn't tell the story, but we have 4 young women from an Asian country who are natural sisters. And it's a long story, but they came to the border and they were separated because 2 of them were adults and they went to adult detention, and 2 went to, well, 1 went to the Children's Center and 1 came to us, but that's through the Young Center. And right now, the women that are coming that are a little bit older are coming through church contacts, you know, through a pastor on the border and also through some shelters on the border that know of us and the Viator House. And so they're referred there.
Are the children of the women who are come and stay at your home, are they enrolled in school or preschool?
Well, they're all under school age. They're tiny ones. And yes, the one who stayed with us for a number of months, well, she actually stayed with us 3 times with her 2 children. And the oldest one we did enroll in preschool in Bartlett. The others, most of the time, the women with children do not stay with us too long because they have some family here. And so they're able to move on, and that's what we help them with. But if they were, the children were 3 or above, we would help them get into school.
Okay, if only 3 out of 55 women from Bethany House win asylum, are 52 deported?
No. The others are waiting for their asylum. For example, the young woman who I interviewed and told you a little bit of the story, she's been waiting 4.5 years for her court case to come up in immigration court. And so most of them are waiting.
I see the one of the questions in the chat was, are the people living at these 2 homes in danger of deportation while they wait for asylum? The answer is no. They are in legal proceedings that protect them from deportation as long as those legal proceedings are continuing. But they are lengthy proceedings, and it takes forever. And the other thing I wanted to mention that Sister Pat mentioned, and we're very grateful for the leagues supporting us, because we have learned, particularly over the last year, that we're not sure there's anyone else doing what Bethany House and Viator House is doing in the United States. So we happen to be on a cutting edge, which this, I believe, is one of the hidden tragedies in our broken immigration system, which is filled with tragedies, is this phenomena, this tragedy of an 18-year-old young woman or man going to adult detention, or even a 19 or 20-year-old like Eric who stuck in detention. I'm sorry, I called him the wrong name. So we have received inquiries from all over the country because immigration lawyers and advocates can't find programs set up, not as shelters, but as homes with the resources for a young person to grow intellectually, spiritually, educationally. So while they maybe are waiting a few years.
There's a couple of questions here about bonds. Who paid Juan's bond and who typically pays the bond?
It's a great question. The ironic thing is Juan was in detention, and they came to him one day and say, "You've been bonded out." And to this day, he doesn't know who put it down. So he's got an angel out there. But we have another story of a young man who came to us from Central America who fled when he was 19 as well. And he was in a for-profit prison in Arizona, and the government required $10,000 bond to release him after he had been through the most horrendous situation in Honduras. And his lawyers, God bless them, found an agency, a nonprofit in Florida. He was in Arizona. They found a nonprofit in Florida that was started by the LGBTQ community to bond out people. So,
yeah, and I mentioned a family friend paid it for one person. The only other one that I know for sure was a family member raised the money. It was a father of daughter and a son, and the daughter was separated from them at the border because she was underage, and they were fleeing the cartel. But she was bonded out by her father raising money from some contact because he was let go.
And Brother Michael Goss just poked his head in and said many are paroled, but that's not a guarantee too, you know, that's.
Okay, I'm looking for other questions. Are there any other questions?
I see questions. What are the greatest needs at each home to support young people? Abby, would you like to begin that?
Sure. I mean, if you are a lawyer, or if you have lawyers in your family and they want to volunteer to do this, NIJC certainly accepts that, trains lawyers to defend these particular asylum seekers. So I would say that's one thing. Bethany House has an Amazon wish list. So our staff puts on specific things that are needed there. So you can go to Amazon and go Bethany House and then look at that list. And I'm happy to send the link to anyone that wants to request that. You can do that via the website, BethanyHouseHospitality.com. I would say, you know, we also can use tutors and volunteers. We're in Hyde Park, so we're a little distance from Palatine and the northwest suburbs. We're having an event on October 24th to celebrate our 4th anniversary. So you're welcome to join us for that. And I just saw in the chat box that gift cards are always a very, very good thing because it gives them the freedom to buy what they need.
We particularly, yeah, we spend $2,000 a month on groceries. So particularly, we shop a lot at Aldi's and Tony's Fresh Market for groceries, even Walmart for groceries. So gift cards, I mean, that's a huge part of our budget, and it's a great way to support these young men. Also, we have roles. We are for tutors, for people who come to the house and help out so our staff can run errands. We want someone, a trained adult in the house all day. And then we even have staff we pay to sleep over because these kids' safety is the most important thing, and safety of spirit, not just body. But if a kid is sick and he's from a different country and there's no one there just to help him, you know, get basic medicine or calm him down, we want someone there. So that's another way to help. And the bigger picture, though, is we have a system that sends 18-year-olds when they turn on their 18th birthday to detention centers. And just because we forbid them in Illinois, the government's going to send them to counties and for-profits around the country. So what we need is everyone at home, without coming to Viator House or Bethany House, can volunteer for those organizations by learning about this broken asylum system and advocating for changes, so that a young person doesn't sit in a county jail surrounded by people charged with serious crimes, that a young person has an attorney representing her or him, and that the federal government starts to divert money from paying for-profit prisons about $130 a day to house an immigrant to alternatives to detention, like Bethany House and Viator House. Viator House, with all the services we offer, private rooms, tutors, opportunities for education, work skills, helping them find jobs. It costs us about $80 a day compared to what the federal government pays. And Bethany House, I'm sure it's much lower than what the federal government pays too. So what we need advocates around the country to keep learning and pushing for a more compassionate asylum system. You don't just have to come to the house
Yeah, I would just emphasize something that Father Cory said. Sorry. That educating yourselves and writing to your legislators about immigration issues at this point is very important. So.
I see a question here about COVID, and I know it's probably due to the fact that there's much out about there that immigrants are bringing COVID to our country, which has been proven to be false, but someone wanted to know if they're tested for COVID before they come. I can
tell you from a woman that arrived less than a week ago, yes, she was tested for COVID at the border, as was her little child. She ended up being positive, so they put her up in someplace and isolated her. And then the child got sick, and we connected through sisters across the country. We connected with somebody in that area to get that child medicine and to help that young woman. And then she came here once they were free of COVID. So if she's an example, everybody's being tested at the border.
Well, I will say that there's a concerted effort in our nation right now by certain media outlets and organizations to paint immigrants as threats. And so one of the false narratives that's being spread is that immigrants are worsening the pandemic. So what's happened, in fact, under the previous administration, the border was closed to people seeking asylum. And even against the advice of the CDC, the border was closed for people seeking asylum. It's called Title 42. The CDC officials, the health officials, advised the administration that this isn't going to make a difference when it comes to the pandemic in our nation. But the former administration was dead set on destroying our asylum system, and it darn nearly did that. Unfortunately, the current administration still, and just recently, reinforced this Title 42. So what's happening is horrendous and tragic at our borders. And I've been down there. I was down there in June. Under Title 42, a family cannot come into the United States to seek asylum because we have closed it due to the pandemic, unless they meet a humanitarian exception. And so we have thousands of vulnerable, mostly, and I've seen them, I help feed them, women and children in dangerous Mexican border towns where they're subject to kidnapping, murder, robbery, rape, because of this order that's based on nonsense, not science, nonsense. So this idea that has been spread, and I heard it on the news, is just more crud from the organized anti-immigrant part of the news media and the politicians who sow fear and hate in order to gain popularity. As for our men, when the pandemic hit, our men voluntarily agreed to wear masks in our home outside their private room. Our men went and got tested every time we had fears that they might have been exposed. We had not one case amongst our participants because of their commitment to staying healthy, not only protecting each other, but stopping the spread of COVID in this nation. And currently they're all fully vaccinated. So I'm happy that was raised, because you'll hear that out there, and feel free to tell people it's nonsense. And you can write President Biden and tell him to reverse Title 42. It is an abomination when it comes to our national values, that we are turning away these vulnerable people because of an order that is not even based in good science.
I think that our last question, and maybe this is hopeful, someone is interested in whether or not you need ESL tutors.
Oh, yes. Yes, we do. Right now, we have 3, 4 at the house that don't speak English, and so need to have some basic before they go to high school. Truman College in Chicago does offer ESL along with high school education, so eventually they will go there, but we need tutors at any rate. Cory?
Yes, thanks for asking. We would love, please get in touch with us. And we are always looking for tutors and everything from basic ESL to people who just willing to sit with a young man who's pretty strong in English, but wants to practice his English or practice reading and understanding something in English. So, by the way, I just put in the chat box a good New York Times article about Title 42. It's important everyone read about that. But yeah, we would love to have you involved.
Okay, I think that concludes our questions for this evening. And I think Gail is going to wrap it up for us then.
Well, on behalf of the League of Women Voters of the Palatine area and the League of Women Voters of the Arlington Heights area and all the towns therein that Heidi mentioned for us before, we are just so thankful. We are so grateful for Father Cory Brost, for Sister Patricia Crowly, for the young people and the stories that they shared this evening, for your ministries, for the way you have inspired us to move forward, to bend the arc of justice. We want to thank the nearly 70 people who attended this evening's presentation from across the state. The League of Women Voters believes that all elections matter, that your vote is your voice. And we also believe that the time in between elections where we sit right now, this time is just as important. And your legislators need to hear your voice. I hope you saw that Kim Reed, who is our state subject matter expert on immigration, posted in the chat that the League of Women Voters has taken a position on the bill that Father Cory was bringing up. So that and the many pieces of legislation and opportunities that Father Cory presented to us and Sister Pat, we hope you are inspired to go forth and take action. This ends the formal program for this evening. Father Cory and Sister Pat have agreed to stay on for a moment later if someone has another question or you want to bring up something later on. But otherwise, we thank you so much on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Palatine, of Arlington Heights, and the state of Illinois. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Well, Father and Sister, what an inspiring program. If Heidi was verklempt during the poem, I'm pretty moved at your level of commitment and ministry. And so thank you for your life's work.
Well, I have to thank Brother Michael Gosh and the staff with whom I work. They are the ones that make it happen. I just really try not to screw it up. And so they continually guide me, and the men with whom I work and the volunteers. I'm just a very small piece in this puzzle.
Yeah, and I'm very grateful. We have a wonderful staff. At the time that your invitation came, we were in transition with executive directors, so I offered to do this. But Darlene Gramigna was our executive director, did a wonderful job, and Sister Kathleen Mulcahy is now our executive director and all of her staff. And of course, the young women. They are the reason that I do this and that all of us need to pay attention to this issue. So thank you for this forum.
Thanks. We look forward to putting it up on our YouTube channel so that we can widen the reach. Also, I happen to have a network with both Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. And so I know that older Scouts are frequently looking for projects for their Gold and Eagle Scout Awards. So for instance, my son built a playground at a local women's shelter. Mm-hmm. So that's the kind of thing that if you ever have, you know, I think Father Cory has a contact, but I'm more enmeshed with Girl Scouts, which would be helpful to you, I think.
Yeah, thank you.
Even just collecting things, you know, like the younger girls, they frequently, they have patches that require that they do a small service. And so they could be collecting things for you. So just an idea.
That's wonderful.
So I'll share your story on the Girl Scout page.
Great, great.
And
thank you.
We can accumulate all these resources and post them on our website as well.
Yes. Okay, that'd be great.
Have either of you been approached to be a model? Any kind of, has any legislator asked for input on taking this nationally?
We haven't been approached, we've offered. And we did have one group in Minnesota, a church group who wanted to model on our model, or base their program on our model. And they came down to see it, but then they didn't have the resources to do it. So that I don't think it developed. But it could be replicated.
One of the things that, we've been in touch with a couple organizations. In pre-pandemic, there was a group of Sacred Heart Brothers in Baton Rouge looking at our model, but then the pandemic just messed it all up. We're in touch with folks around the country, and we hope, and it was something that I would talk with Bethany House about, is to do the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops Office of Migration Policy has offered to host a webinar on the Bethany House, Viator House model, and then to bring in advocates from around the country. And one of the things that one of our strategic goals this year is to put together a toolkit that will assist others in replicating the model and then offer them consulting as well.
Yeah, and we're actually working through the Leadership Conference for Women Religious to touch base with other women's religious communities around the country.
There's some nice comments too on the chat, just in terms of appreciation for the program and wanting to sign up to volunteer. So hopefully you'll hear from some of these people.
Great. Thank you.
Doesn't look like there's more questions.
It doesn't. I think we're probably able to wind up this evening, but thank you so much. And will you please tell Juan/Carlos how much we appreciate his sharing his story with us?
I will. I know
it's wonderful.
He's such a wonderful man. He is. I wish I could have talked more about how he brings his spirit of hospitality and fun and kindness to the guys. He'll organize them to cook out, to have games, to have a movie night, to go on a hike. He is just such a gift. After all he's been through, all he does is think about helping others.
Jeez. Well, I think even during that short interview, his sensitivity was very apparent.
So thank you. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
okay,
Gail.
We'll be in touch.
So much.
Hope we can stay partnering in ways. That would be wonderful.
Hope so too.
All right.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye now.
Good night. Thank you again.
Okay, we still have quite a few people.
Thanks, Cammy.
Oh, well, thank you, Sister Pat. I was in your French class.
I know. Au revoir. Okay. A bientôt.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
That was.
We've got about 9 people still on.
They've probably gone in another room and they forgot they left their computer in.
Come on, Gail.
This is great. This is great, you guys. Thanks so much for putting it together. It's amazing.
All right, ladies, I'm going to stop the recording
Yes.
now.
Oh,